What is up? I'm guessing we are live now. This is going to be our first stream. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the debut of the Corner Turnbuckle channel. My name is Jason. Some people, maybe from many years ago, might recognize me or know that my old channel called the Anthem of Impact Wrestling Show did that for a couple of years, kind of off and on. But, you know, kind of want to get back into it again, kind of have some fun doing some of these stuff. Want to do, obviously, stuff like this, like live streaming. And the reason why I kind of didn't just redo that same channel or, redo that channel is because, obviously, like, it's not called Impact Wrestling anymore. It's now back, thank God, back to being TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. So the name doesn't quite work. Outside of, the name of the show is still called Impact. But, and then on top of that, also within the last handful of years, kind of like with the whole Bloodline stuff and Cody finishing his story and going back to WWE, I've kind of got more interested into WWE. So on this channel, I'm also going to, from time to time, talk about WWE. Just with my life schedule, it's not going to be like a post-show kind of thing or a weekly show. It's just going to be kind of here and there whenever I happen to have time. I'll hop on here, talk about maybe a Raw, talk about an NXT, especially since TNA and NXT, they've been doing a lot of crossover with their shows. Maybe we start seeing the crossovers with some of the main roster shows now. I know there's some of the rumors out there right now talking about possible main roster people showing up to Slammiversary. So maybe that leads to TNA being on some live, Raws and SmackDowns. Maybe not, but if it does, I'll be on here to talk about all that stuff. But really, those are about the only two pro wrestling shows that I watch anymore, just due to just life and time, everything like that. So, that's what you can kind of expect out of this TV show, out of this channel, and going forward. But so, if you're a big TNA fan, tune into this channel. Hopefully we'll have some great conversations, and as the channel just gets going and starts to grow, hopefully, we'll get more people in here in the actual chat. I know this is the first, my first deal, so I was not expecting a whole lot of people in chat, but if you guys are watching this post the live stream, once it's done, once it's just posted onto the channel, and you guys happen to find this channel now that there's a video uploaded, please go give me a follow on X. Look up the Corner Turnbuckle. Also subscribe. Give me a like if you like what I'm doing. Leave some comments down. Do all those kind of fun things to hopefully get this channel start growing. And we can start having some fun talking TNA wrestling and pro wrestling, WWE, all those kind of fun things. Obviously, today I want to talk about Slammiversary that is happening this Sunday. First of all, just kind of going over to kind of what the overall thoughts about a lot of this stuff is. I was starting to feel like for the first time they weren't really building. Like the matches all of a sudden that were popping up for Slammiversary looked really good. But I thought that the build and the stories weren't quite there. But here we are now, 2 days out from Slammiversary. And to be honest, I think they've actually done a pretty good job. It wasn't great to start. And I think sometimes with TNA, those will happen because of the tape schedule that they have with taping shows. I think sometimes it does hinder the storytelling just a little bit because of how much it would give away. And sometimes I think they're being a little bit smarter now about not giving away things in the stories. Unfortunately, this time, I didn't really read a whole lot of spoilers. I try not to, but sometimes, people just put them out on Twitter without, saying spoiler warning or click here to see what happened at the tapings and just show up a picture. So a lot of us, I think, already kind of knew that JC Jane was going to be the one that was going to beat Jordan and face Masha at Slammiversary. I kept my hopes up that, but can WWE do that to Jordan, where she came out and had this thing, that promo about she's been given a lot of chances and she's failed at these chances and she can't fail and all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, maybe there's a chance, but at the same time, Jordan just left TNA, so do I also want Jordan to come back to wrestle Masha, which we've already seen some great matches between those two? So I just didn't quite know. But long story short, that kind of ruined a little bit of that storytelling, right? Because we kind of already figured it out, because they had to record and shoot that angle of the go home show where they're in the ring together and they're holding up the belts and they're saying, okay, we're going after each other. So but I think outside of that, I think the build for most of the matches have been pretty good. They're always going to have some kind of last minute on the go home show matches thrown together. That's just kind of how TNA does things. So like you got the stuff with Dark State versus the System and Matt Cardona, and then you've got the six-man tag that I believe is going to happen on the Countdown, which is going to be the fourth rope guys, Enzo, Josh Bishop, and Zilla Vatu versus Jake something, Steve Macklin, and Mance Warner, which I think is going to be a really good, fun match. I think that match is going to be insane. Mance Warner and Zilla Fatu going at it probably at some point. It's going to be awesome. Zilla and Steve Macklin, I think, could tear the house down. And who knows, maybe there's stories that will now lunge off of that. And in the years, a lot of years past, Slammiversary has almost been the bigger, better show than what TNA's, biggest show of the year is, our WrestleMania Bound for Glory. So what I'm kind of getting a feeling of and what I'm hoping for is to see what happens from Slammiversary is the beginning of the stories that are going to be told and finished at Bound for Glory this year. Because that's how I would be doing it if I was the booker. I would make Slammiversary kind of be that kickoff that is now the road to the biggest show of the year. And now you have almost a whole half a year to get there, right? We're in July, so August, September, October. Start having it at the very end of October. Man, why does that feel so much further? Okay, so maybe not quite half a year, but now you got 3 to 4 months to build to Bound for Glory, which should be your marquee show of the year, right? Before I really get into the matches too, just want to kind of throw some thoughts in on the whole WWE partnership, since I haven't been able to talk about it because this is the first show. I think it's been going really good. It's been a lot of fun. I know there's a lot of gripe about Trick winning the World Heavyweight Championship. I think how he's won it and what he's done since, and how they've had TNA react to Trick winning it and holding the title. The story that they've been telling has been a overall better story than whenever Kenny Omega won it. I think Kenny Omega winning the title was a bigger deal. Whenever TNA was partnering with AEW, but the story since the win, I think, has been told better. Not saying it's been like this amazing story or anything, but I do think if you have to compare the two, I think it has been now done up a little bit better. But outside of that, I totally get how working with NXT kind of makes TNA look a little bit downgraded from maybe what TNA is wanting to get to. You hear like Carlos Silva talk about on Ariel Helwani's show. Not that he like brought this up or that he's necessarily promoting it, but whenever Ariel asked him, could you be a number 2 promotion in the world or in the US? And he said, sure, right? I think number 1, you should always be fighting to get better. But that does feel a little counterproductive whenever you say that you're trying to get to be the number 2, but then you're working with the developmental side of WWE. Now, I totally get why some of those wrestlers in NXT should come to TNA. It kind of gives them, a little different experience than just working what WWE does, right? Now they can kind of see a whole different way of the way wrestling is done, especially since WWE's really gone to the NIL, just athletes, entertainers that have now become wrestlers, right? You don't see them as much going after the indie darlings. Some of those have gone to like what the what's it called, the WWE ID thing and their Evolve show. Those have been some of the guys you might see on independent scene. But for the most part, people that are going to the performance center are former football players, gymnasts, cheerleaders, skateboarders, swimmers, surfers, those type of things. So their first actual learning of pro wrestling, or their only learning of pro wrestling, has been at the performance center and the way WWE does business and does wrestling. So I think it is good for them to have a place that they can kind of send over for a couple weeks at a time or a day or whatever, work with some different people that have maybe experience doing different things on the independent scene and doing things differently, learning how to think on their own, and not have such a machine behind them, like the WWE. So I get that whole point. But I do think it is starting to get time where we can start seeing some main roster stuff, not just the Joe Hendry at WrestleMania, not just the random Royal Rumble appearances by the women and the men. I think a good story, and there's a lot of intertwining things. We do have the Hardys, Nick Nemeth, plenty of people that have come to TNA from WWE that have that history, right? Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, JDC. I mean, there's a ton of people there to have those stories, and it makes sense. And then every once in a while, if they're liking, all the reports are that they love, obviously, Joe, they love what Mike Santana has been doing. Okay, then give them a shot. Hopefully, they'll give them a shot at that main roster stuff. And I think that would really be the thing that would tip over and really help TNA grow even further. I just think it will be just a huge deal, man. I've been a fan of TNA wrestling since 2004. I found him online because I was having like a little nostalgia bug thing of looking online, just looking at old wrestling stuff. I'd gotten out of kind of pro wrestling for a couple years just due to being busy in high school, playing football, playing a bunch of sports. So you're always practicing. You got games on Monday nights or on Friday nights, and you just kind of get out of the loop and kind of get to that age, where you just don't really watch a whole lot of pro wrestling. A lot of people around me weren't watching pro wrestling, so there was nobody to kind of watch it with. The Monday Night Wars had just kind of died down. WCW wasn't doing a whole lot of great stuff. So it wasn't necessarily like there was a huge draw to wrestling either at that time. This is back in 01, 02, 03. And at that time, the pay-per-view stuff wasn't as hugely known about, and I wasn't huge into knowing all the dirt sheet stuff or backstage stuff or, any of that kind of stuff. So there was, for me in my life, there just wasn't necessarily an outlet to find out about these new promotions, indie promotions, people that are on pay-per-view, stuff like that. So, like I said, just one day I happened to have like this nostalgia bug. I was kind of looking back, and I remember NWO even had like their own website. So I was like, oh, let's see if NWO they saw that NWO website up and stuff like that. Didn't see any of it, but stumbled upon TNA Wrestling. And I started looking at the roster, and I saw, K-Dog. Scott Hall's name was still on there, even though he wasn't really wrestling for the company anymore, but his name was on the roster. Road Dogg was on there. I recognized him as K-Quick, but it was Ron Killings. Some of those type of guys, Jeff Jarrett. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. All right. Like, I love me some K-Dog. So let's... what's the? Oh, I see the advertisement on the website. I can't remember the date specifically now, but debut on Fox Sports Net at like 3 in the afternoon my time. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to start watching then, see what this is all about. And fell in love from that first show. And that has been TNA has been my number one promotion since then. I've gone back, whether on YouTube or on now TNA Plus once they started getting their own streaming services. I've watched every episode of TNA. Every episode, every pay-per-view. Before that, I would buy the old pay-per-views, ones I hadn't seen, so I'd always have them, or say that I can see them, all that stuff. So, been a fan for a very, very long time. So whenever I see them grow and do things like with WWE and kind of really get this notoriety that they're having now, you see a lot more people talking about it here on YouTube. I'm seeing more people talk about it on X. Some wrestling personalities that usually don't. Now all of a sudden they have stories up on about TNA all the time, and they're not bad stories. It's not just, hey, countdown to when this wrestler that we really like's contract's up so then they can go to WWE or AEW. Now they're help promoting. They're telling good stories. They're reporting good news for once. We're 2 days away from Slammiversary, guys, and there's no just bad news story. There's no story of like, hey, this is awesome, but guess what? Joe Hendry is leaving right after the pay-per-view. Oh, hey, this is all good and dandy, but this person's in trouble. Hey, all good and dandy, but whatever. There's always a bad story like right before a TNA pay-per-view. Fans that have been fans for a long time know exactly what I'm talking about. But enough of the gibbering jabbing. I guess we can get down to this card, go over this card a little bit, and also, of course, I will give you guys my predictions. If you guys want, if you're watching this after the fact, leave some of your predictions down in the comments section, or let me know what you think about my predictions. See if I'm just way off the mark on any of these things. All right, so let's talk about the pre-show and they are bringing back that pre-show panel, the Busted Open panel. As of right now, it's going to be Tommy Dreamer, Gia Miller, and Dave LaGreca. In times past, they've had Mark Henry. I think the most recent pay-per-view they had O'Shea Jackson, which was awesome. Seeing him kind of giving TNA some love and being on the TNA pre-show. And for that idea, okay, I like that idea, right? And in this case, I think TNA, guys, creative, Carlos, if you're hearing me, if you're seeing this, okay? In this situation, it is okay to copy WWE, okay? I just think it looks super cheesy or cringy, and it looks very like indie kind of whenever you've got the panel with open arena mics on at a fold-out table with a skirt and an apron on, doing like a pre-show panel. Move that table over to like the hard cam side. Usually there's not any people sitting on the hard cam side with the TNA event, because of the way they have the crane and everything else. So just set it up in that open, kind of an open area. Put your TNA backdrop down, so it doesn't just you just don't have like empty seats behind you. Have the mics going straight to the camera and the TV production, and just do a normal panel. Have them talk about it. Give some video packages. I totally get the trying to look different and be a little different, but sometimes like whenever people already do something and it's really good, just do that. I think giving Gia Miller, who I think is super talented, this like platform and this chance to do this, like kind of be that lead anchor type thing, I think is a great idea. I think she does a good job. But like just the kind of that whole, like they're all just kind of sitting there like this, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, hey, let me pick up this mic and talk on it. It's just a little, but it is what it is. But yeah, I just had to get that off my chest. And if you guys agree with me, please let me know. Let me know. Make sure that I'm not just like being too harsh about this, because I don't think I am. You know, I still enjoy it. Like, I still watch it. I don't sit here and like say this is the most god awful thing, so I won't ever watch a pre-show. But anyway, it looks like there's going to be 2 matches during the countdown show. It's going to start off with the Knockouts tag match with the Inspiration versus Ash and Heather by Elegance, the Elegance brand. I think this match is actually going to be like pretty good. I actually think it's going to be very entertaining. Ash and Heather have like always kind of seemed to surprise me on their matches here at the last couple of pay-per-views, where, you know, they actually are like really good and really entertaining, hard hitting. And I think, you know, the Inspiration, I think they've got like not a chip on their shoulder, but I feel like they've kind of got this attitude like they're here to prove something. Whether it's like just that they still got it after, you know, having kids and being out for so long, you know, that they can still go, whatever the case may be. It just feels like that, kind of the way that they've just kind of really come in and hit the ground running with what they're doing, just their aggressiveness, and all that stuff. So I personally think at the end of this match, you know, I know a lot of people are going to say like same old TNA. As soon as like what they consider a bigger draw comes in, they give the title to them like right away, kind of like they did last time Inspiration was here. But I do think Inspiration is going to win this match. I think the Inspiration is going to win this match, but I don't think this feud is over. I think it'll go back and forth, and it could lead back to the Elegance brand winning it back. But at the same time, like, I think the Elegance brand itself, I don't think they need the titles. I think the act as a whole with, you know, those two, and then the Concierge, you know, the Iceman, and then now their new one, Maggie Lee. I think they could tell a lot of good stories with all of them, and be super entertaining. And I just don't think that they necessarily have the need to have the titles to do those type of stories and be entertaining. I think the Inspiration then can take those titles, maybe take them to WWE, and do storylines there. Do storylines. I think they could have some pretty good matchups with Harley Hudson and Miley Grace. You know, maybe there's some other tag teams that they can kind of put together. And I just think that's probably what's going to happen. I think especially if that's going to be the starting match. I don't know if that is or not. I don't know if it's going to be the first match of the countdown show, or if it's going to be this other one that we'll talk about here in a second. But I think a title change on that pre-show could really kind of set the tone too for what we could see for the whole night. The other match of the countdown show looks like it will be Team Fourth Rope, Enzo Amore, or I guess he just goes by Enzo, or Real One now. Zilla Fatu and Josh Bishop versus Steve Macklin, Mance Warner, and Jake Something. You know, the whole Fourth Rope thing. So I don't know if this is just TNA doing something with one of their partners and getting them on this show to try to help Fourth Rope, or if this is going to be a longer story. Because the promos that they've shown the last 2 weeks give me NWO vibes. And because it's done in black and white, you got the talker, right? That's starting it. And he's talking about, you know, oh, you're coming to my backyard. You know, how can you, you know, come to my backyard without talking to me, blah, blah, blah. You know, the tone is a little like, we've got a problem with you now, TNA. You know, we want to fight. And that feels very old school NWO to me. You know, if you're a fan that maybe wasn't around during the original NWO days in WCW, I suggest you go back and watch some of these old promos where they would sit there and it would start off, and every promo would start off with, this has been paid for by the NWO. This has been paid for by the following. And they kind of do that now, right? This ad has been paid for by Fourth Rope, and then on X, TNA puts out this post has been paid for by Fourth Rope. So is Fourth Rope now going to be kind of almost like an NWO faction in TNA? Are they going to kind of do some invading? Because if that's the case, then I could see Fourth Rope winning. And the reason why I say that is because in this last promo, Enzo mentioned something about he knows some good brothers. Now, I know good brothers overall is just a term that a lot of wrestlers will use for each other and the guys in the back that they consider like good dudes and good hands and all that stuff. But it also feels like maybe that's who he's referencing, and they're not part of this match. All right, it's just Zilla, Josh Bishop, and Enzo. Maybe the Good Brothers show up, cost TNA the match, and beat up Team TNA, and now the invasion has started, and here's a story that started. If that were to happen also on the Countdown show, right? You're probably going to now tune into the pay-per-view, right? Oof, this is what they're doing on their Countdown show? They have a title change, and they have, like, this match that's probably going to kick ass, and then the Good Brothers show up, and now they're starting this whole, like, kind of storyline with Fourth Rope kind of coming in, invading, and beating up TNA people. That would be awesome. But if it's just, TNA trying to give Fourth Rope a little bit of a rub and get them some notoriety, then I'm going to go with my prediction, because that's probably the more realistic outcome, which is then Team TNA will win, right? It'll still be an awesome match. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, I can't wait to see Macklin and Fatu go at it, or Mansour and Fatu. I think, man, even Jake Summit, okay, it's really good. I'm kind of surprised it's on the Countdown, but it also kind of makes sense too, because it's got the Fourth Rope guys. So put them on the free part of the show and get some eyes going. Next, so that's the pre-show. Now we get kind of into the main thing, which leads us to the 8-man tag of Team TNA, The System and Matt Cardona versus Team NXT, Dark State. Again, this one is really kind of a 50-50 on me, where I think this could go. If what I think is going to happen in the main event happens, and what I think is going to happen in the Knockouts women's title match, I feel like NXT's got to get a win somewhere, and it could be here with Dark State. And it could be one of those things that maybe they don't even get the win. They just go to a no contest because, they go for a disqualification, or it just turns into a big brawl to where they just throw the match out kind of thing. Something like that. I could see that, or I could see Dark State winning. So I think for that, I'm going to have to go... I'm going to go Dark State on that one. Earlier, I was definitely thinking, when I was first kind of going over this earlier, I was definitely thinking Team TNA, it's System and Cardona, we're going to win it. Because, it's TNA pay-per-view, you have the TNA people win. But again, if the storylines, if again, the overall thought of this could be the beginning of storylines that will end at Bound for Glory, I think this could be something along those lines. Maybe not specifically with the System and Dark State, but I think Dark State and TNA doing stuff and wreaking havoc, I think could be a thing. I think maybe in that case too, even with Fourth Rope, TNA's finally getting hit on several different angles, and that could be the overall arching story that gets us to Bound for Glory of, TNA, oh my gosh, they're, everybody wants to get at TNA and blah, 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 and, whatever the stories could be. But this is kind of where I thought some of that stuff could go. So for that one, I'm going to have to go Dark State. Up next, we've got Tessa Blanchard versus Indy Hartwell. And, I think this match is going to be also just like really good. I think a lot of these matches are going to be very good, if you can't tell. I'm going to be very interested to see, because I didn't really watch a whole lot of Indy Hartwell in WWE. But I'm very curious, because it's just WWE women in general. Obviously wrestle a very total different style than what especially people like Tessa do. The best, to me personally, I think the best thing that ever happened to Naomi was her coming to TNA. Never, not saying that she was ever like a bad wrestler or bad anything, but she came to TNA and she started wrestling, Deanna and Jordan and people like that, and people that are pretty snug, pretty hard hitting, pretty aggressive in how they wrestle. And I think it showed her the freedom to do that as well. And I think she has taken that stuff that she did in TNA and has now taken it to WWE. And I think that's why she's now women's champion. She's killing it with that heel gimmick. I mean, just absolutely killing it. And you can still see a little bit of difference in the way that she wrestles. And I think it's been a lot of fun to watch. So back to this match, it's going to be interesting. I'm always interested to see how Indy's going to wrestle in this type of a big match against a Tessa Blanchard, who is very snug and aggressive and strong styleness, and the way that she wrestles. So I'm very interested in this match just to see how that goes, because then I think this will tell us kind of like that type of wrestler we're going to get out of Indy during her time here in TNA. So I think at the end of the day, this match, even though I do believe Tessa will get back up into the Knockouts title picture, I think it's going to come later, and I think she will lose this match to Indy. I do think Indy Hartwell is going to win this match. I don't know if this necessarily moves Indy straight into the Knockouts title picture. I have a feeling, at least for the next month, the person that I think is going to win the Knockouts title tonight will have somebody else to deal with for at least a little while. So I don't know if Indy's going to jump in there, but I do have Indy winning this match, and I think it's going to be a pretty good match. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about this match after the pay-per-view. Next up, we've got Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali. Man, this one I've kind of gone back and forth too on, because just kind of logically, Cedric's the new guy. They're trying to, I would think that they would want to give him a good big win, kind of do all that stuff. But then, they just kind of got the Fourth Order kind of back together. I don't know. It feels weird saying back together whenever. I never really think they were ever necessarily like falling apart. They kind of played with that for like 2 weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks. But they're stronger. I guess you could say that now that the story is showing that they're a stronger group, that their bond is stronger. But so I don't know if you want to have Mustafa lose right after they do this whole thing where Tasha, does this whole swerve on Cedric and says, and has this whole, promo about, I did what I need to do to, get us stronger as a group. And then just to have Mustafa lose, I don't know, man. But I'm just going to go with my head and go with Cedric Alexander, because I think if you're going to bring in a name like Cedric, I think to have him win in a match like this, kind of after getting played by Tasha, I think is a good way to go. But the way that the whole story's been going, who knows? Maybe it's a double swerve by Tasha, and she turns on Mustafa again and helps Cedric, and then Cedric's gonna be a heel. I don't know. going to be very interesting. Storyline wise, I'm very interested in this match. And they're both good storytellers. To be honest, to think that Cedric Alexander's in TNA right now is awesome. Whenever he was killing it and really kind of rising up in Ring of Honor, he was always the guy that I just looked at and was like, he needs to be in TNA. This dude needs to be in TNA. And now, he's finally here. So, cannot wait. This is going to be good. Let's go Cedric Alexander with that one. Then after that, and I don't know, obviously I'm not in any order. I just kind of went to TNAWrestling.com and looked at the card, and this is just kind of the order that they have it in. So this could be the order, but I don't know. I don't think, it's pretty rare that they ever go title match like all the last 4 matches. Sometimes they do maybe the last 2 to 3 titles, but usually the X is up first in that first hour, stuff like that. So I'm not sure, but I'm going in order of how it was on their site, so that's why I keep saying next up. But next up is the X Division title match, Moose versus Leon Slater. Everything tells you that it's going to be Leon, right? This could be Leon Slater's kind of coronation and become X Division champion, become the youngest X Division champion, and really, really make him a star. And I can see that. I won't be mad if that does happen as well. But I think Moose keeps winning. I think it just makes a little more sense for Moose to win here. I think it makes sense for him to keep this going and for him to lose it at Bound for Glory on a bigger, maybe even hopefully a bigger stage, maybe against another main roster former X Division champion. Maybe Bound for Glory is where we finally get to see somebody that's going to make a special appearance Sunday night. All I gotta say is maybe Moose by Bound for Glory should get ready to fly. See what I did there? Yeah. But yeah, no, I do think that could happen. So, we're talking X Division, so let's just talk about it right now. My prayers have been answered, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite TNA wrestler of all time. One of my top favorite wrestlers of all time, period. AJ Styles is coming home. I don't care if it is just for this one night. I don't care if it's just to announce that he's going to finally go into the Hall of Fame and he finally was willing to accept that honor. Because I know on a Chris Van Vliet interview, he mentioned why he turned it down before, because he doesn't want to go into a Hall of Fame until his career's over with, and that makes sense. But maybe he finally realizes that it is at least close enough to the end. And with this partnership, it makes sense to maybe accept that, and maybe that's all of this appearances on Sunday. I definitely don't think it's going to be a match, obviously. I think if it was a match, I think it would already be announced. But I think, again, the whole thing of Slammiversary could be the beginning of storylines that will end at Bound for Glory. And I think this could be one of them. I think AJ could... Moose wins, right? And in Moose and System fashion, start beating up Leon after the match. Out comes AJ. Now, come on. AJ Styles giving maybe the help. Also, with the Hardys, giving Leon Slater the love and the rub. Plus then challenging Moose for that X Division title. Maybe he's the guy that finally comes up and says, listen, I know what the X Division is all about, and I will return the X Division back to what it was. And I'm going to take that title off of you. And then what they can do is, once AJ wins that title off of Moose, right, say, we're going to hold the first ever AJ Styles Invitational and have a tournament kind of like the X Cup. Or he could just say it's the X Cup, right? And the winner will get the now vacated X Division Championship. Right? And maybe the finals, after Bound for Glory, the finals of that tournament ends at Genesis. Right? Something like that. I think that would be very entertaining. I think that's a way to get the belt off of Moose, have AJ win it again, and not feel like, well, that's dumb because it's AJ, right? Like, people love AJ Styles. TNA fans love AJ. We will excuse a lot of things because, well, it's involving AJ. If it means we get to see AJ Styles in a TNA wrestling ring one more time, cool. We'll take it. I think I speak for a lot of them, a lot of fans that are TNA fans. That would be okay with that. I would love it. So, let's go with Moose on that one. Come with AJ Styles, maybe coming out after that match to help a beaten down Leon Slater, and then storyline evolves to being AJ challenges Moose, who, Moose also has that whole kind of gimmick of he beats up TNA legends, right? So that's my pick, Moose, with that whole kind of story coming out of it. Up next, we've got the 4-way tag team ladder match for the TNA tag team championships. First Class versus the Nemesis versus the Hardys versus the Rascals. This one is also tough, right? Nemesis holding on to it makes sense. Hardys winning it back makes maybe the most sense. Having First Class win this gives them like a huge boost in kind of their level of where their tag team is at. Also kind of like, man, they're sending Casey Navarro everywhere to do media. Everywhere. And they already like AJ Francis and what he does media-wise and his connections and everything else. So to have two of those guys be super media savvy in the same tag team, them winning the titles makes sense. They could take those titles to WWE, to NXT, to wherever, and hold their own. The Rascals, after last night's show, where, to come out and do their run-in, they're the only ones that got, like, a legit full entrance. Like, during the run-in, the lights went off and did the whole smoke and all that stuff, and then they come running out. So they were clearly, like, showcasing them as a big deal. And their whole production is a big deal. So, I for a second there I went, well, maybe they're gonna go with the Rascals too. So any of these guys could go, but I just feel like, again, it makes most sense, and especially if they're going to Bound for Glory, to make Bound for Glory the biggest pay-per-view. Because I do feel that's what's coming. Because I remember Tommy Dreamer talking about this going into 2025 on Busted Open, where they made these bold predictions. And, right, you said within the year, TNA will have a TV deal and we'll sell out a big arena. We'll sell out, like, what I think his thought was like a 10,000 seat arena. You do that by making this one come very, very close, and then building off of this one, which is Slammiversary, which right now we're sitting at almost 6,000, right? By showtime, maybe they get to almost 7. If they can get to 7, that'd be awesome. If they get to 7,000 people, that'll be crazy for where they've been, man. But if they can all of a sudden then piggyback off of what they're doing at Slammiversary to get to Bound for Glory, and, I have a feeling we'll probably get that announcement on this pay-per-view of where Bound for Glory is going to be and when it's going to be. It'll probably happen at this pay-per-view. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, because that's how you do that, right? You have a Moose versus AJ Styles. You get the Hardys, and the Hardys will face a big name team, probably from WWE as well. So I just think that you get the Hardys. The Hardys kind of want to have that little WWE run, and I think they could do that. I think the Hardys could win the titles, go to the main roster shows, do some main roster crossover stuff, and then that ends up being a story that involves a match at Bound for Glory. So let's go the Hardys. I'm going to go with the Hardys on that one. Up next, now you get the Knockouts world title match. Well, I guess it would be the knockouts, and the NXT women's title match. It's the winners take all match. Masha Slamovich versus JC Jane. Obviously, Masha. That's who I've got here. Masha will win this. TNA had NXT win the men's world title. I think now it, one, makes sense, but two, it's only right that they reciprocate and let TNA win the NXT women's title. And I think Masha is going to hold both titles and hold it well. This is where I think another surprise is going to happen, I think, after this match. I think Natty Neidhart, Natalya will come out because they have their match at Bloodsport. And Natty, kind of was part of that first NXT women's title feud stuff. Her and Charlotte, and had a bunch of matches for that title. And I want to say, I believe her and Paige wrestled for that title too. So she could even kind of have that NXT angle as well of, I was there whenever it was first around, like whenever it was first being, that title was first being created. So I'm going to be the one to take it away from you. I'm going to do it at the Bloodsport. So I think that's where that's going to go. So I think we're going to see Natalya show up at Slammiversary. And whatever happens at Bloodsport, but then that could also then lead to a really good match at Bound for Glory. And maybe at Bloodsport, Natty wins both titles. And then it's Natty versus, not Masha, but Tessa. But if not, I think the match, if it's not going to, if it's going to be two TNA ladies, I think it's going to be Tessa and Masha at Bound for Glory. So, but I do have Masha winning this match, and then Natalya coming out. So I think those are the couple surprises. The AJ with Moose, maybe the Good Brothers, and during the countdown, and then Natalya coming out and kind of getting face to face with Masha. Which brings us to the main event of the night, the triple threat match. Joe Hendry, Mike Santana, Trick Williams. And, man, the only reason why this one's hard is because I don't know where TNA's head's at creatively, right? I don't think the winner of this match comes down to how they've been telling the stories at all. I think this is who wins this match is strictly a business decision. Do they throw it back on Joe? Because Joe is the biggest star that TNA has right now. I think, hands down. Does Trick Williams keep it? So then they have that shot next Tuesday on NXT of Trick Williams holding the TNA World title, being confronted by The Undertaker. Or do they pull the trigger and do the right thing, in all honesty, and have Mike Santana win in his hometown in front of 7,000, possibly 7,000 people, be part of, win it at the TNA's biggest event in, as of now, I think it's 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. He's deserved it. I think he's put in the hard work. For a long time with him in LAX, I saw world champion out of Mike Santana. He had that look, the way he talks. You can tell his time with Eddie Kingston, whenever Eddie Kingston, I think, really rubbed off on him. And you can tell that, he's really taken a lot from learning from Eddie Kingston, because just the way he talks, that raw emotion, just that pure passion that he always talks with, gives every vignette with, every promo with, is just off the chart. And what he can do in the ring is always insane. Dude can talk. Dude's got the look. He's just got that charisma, man. He's got that it. And it's shining. It's shining really bright, especially whenever he's on NXT. You can tell. So that's my pick, because for this main event, I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to go with what I want to see, and that is Mike Santana become the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, right? You can't have him have that match with Josh Alexander and be now known as the standard of TNA and then have him losing that triple threat. Now, the only way, if Trick Williams does win this, I will say I am hoping that they book it to be kind of a dusty finish and that it's something screwy happens or some other WWE NXT people show up and help Trick win kind of thing. Maybe it's First Class, which I'm kind of hoping not. I'd kind of like to see this kind of evolve more into a WWE NXT versus TNA kind of thing. Instead of having like the random heels like help out NXT people and then the random heel NXT people are kind of helping out TNA, or the baby faces are like, oh, but we're all fun, so let's just hang out and we'll wrestle. No, like let's see a little kind of back and forth and choose teams and sides and be more like WWE versus TNA. I think that'd be a lot more fun to watch as a fan. But those are my predictions. That's the whole card. And like I said, I'd love to see what you guys think of what my predictions are, where my thoughts are going. I know that there's been some other like talk about a couple main roster people are being talked about being there. I think it's going to be people more like a Natalia, maybe a Ron Killings, that kind of level of people, maybe a tag team, like I said, shows up. What that tag team would be, I don't know. Maybe a DIY, maybe because, TNA also has been kind of working with AAA as well, since AAA has been bought up by WWE. I think those are kind of the level of people, don't expect a Randy Orton, don't expect a John Cena. They're not showing up. If they do, holy crap, right? Like, that'd be insane. That would really blow up TNA's popularity. I think for sure. That would get them on the radar of a lot of people if somebody like a Randy Orton or a John Cena shows up. Don't think it'll happen. Don't get your hopes up, okay? Don't just start going wild with all these theories and thoughts. I think the people that I mentioned before, I think it's going to be more likely of who it'll be. And look, I'm excited for that. That's enough for me. Because I'd rather it just be like legit people that can make a good story and out of this and have a good program, rather than just have like people showing up to show up, but yeah, those are my thoughts. Again, with this channel, I look forward to hopefully growing this channel, get more people, start having people in the chat, chatting it up. Love to have some feedback. So yeah, leave some comments down, hit the subscribe button, go follow me on Twitter or X. Also, a little shameless plug here at the end, Media Days. So gonna try to do a couple different things here on YouTube and have some fun. And just doing some things, man. Gonna try to kind of get better at this whole live streaming thing and the editing and everything else. And so hopefully things start going and going good. So again, please do all the things that all the YouTubers say. Hit the notification button, the like button, the subscribe button. Do all those things. It'll make me very happy. All right. Till next time. I'll probably do a review show from Slammiversary probably on Monday afternoon, Monday evening. It's kind of depends whenever I get home from work. Like I said, my work schedule and then just life. I've got a 3-year-old, so and my wife works a lot of nights, so it's just kind of depending on when I can find that little free time, that open time to get on here and talk for an hour. I will definitely try to get on here and do that. Stick to the socials though, and I'll try to keep people updated, give people like a 20-30 minute warning of when I'm going to go live. I'll probably rarely ever do any like pre-recorded shows anymore. Just kind of do the live stream stuff, get on here and chat, and then it'll upload after that. So yeah, so probably until Monday night. Hope everybody has a great Slammiversary Sunday. I hope we are showered with amazing wrestling and amazing surprises that TNA loves to bring to their pay-per-views. And I hope everybody has a really, really good, safe, fun time. So until